Before this week's video begins, I want to thank DC for the tennis ball tier, Liquid Tangerine for the tennis ball tier, and for pitching 1 time, and Chiron for 1 time. Thanks, guys. Heyo everyone, Bisha B. Barkin here. This is a bit of a more serious video, and is definitely something that needs to be discussed concerning this community. Also obligatory, if you're one of my IRL friends, you should probably skip this video before we dive into today's topic. Today we're talking about a topic that I really wanted to avoid, but it's time I threw my hat into the ring on this one. Today's topic is about zoos, and their continuing plague within this community. That being said, instead of just shitting on them, because let's be real, we're almost all aware about their negative impact on the animals they claim to love, I want to take a bit of a deep dive into how we got here. Why is furry and zoo so closely tied by some of those outside of the community? Who are the Zetas, and just who is this Sappho character we keep hearing about? Well, let's talk about that. Buckle up, get comfy, and grab your favorite snack, because today we're taking a dive and discussing the cult of the zoo. So let's start at the basics. What is a zoo? By the way, I'm gonna be saying zoo instead of zoophile because I don't want to edit in censors every 10 seconds and it's just kind of a gross word, you know? Plus, we know what it is, and anyways, let's just get back to the video. A zoo is someone who has a sexual and, or according to them, romantic attraction towards an animal that is not human. That's kind of it, to be honest. Now, there are various levels of zoo, according to them, ranging from non-practicing, in which people have those attractions but don't act on them, and one of the more extreme being zoo sadism, which is when people only use the animals for their sexual desires, with no concern for the animal's well-being. While there are multiple tiers, and yes, the worst one is objectively the worst, that doesn't mean that having those feelings towards non-humans isn't bad. Any level of zoophilia is wrong, and if you are watching this and you have those feelings, I highly suggest you seek some sort of help or support group that is not any of the following I'm gonna discuss today. If you have those thoughts or such towards animals but are seeking help through counseling or therapy, then more power to you. It's the people who are proud of it and are trying to say that it's not a problem and the animal actually likes it or whatever other excuses arise that bother me. Anyways, we've laid out what a zoo is. It's pretty straightforward in my opinion, so why do furries get confused with it? Why are all of us dragged through the dirt due to the actions of a few? Correlation between zoos and the furry community is, unfortunately, a Venn diagram. Now, the middle section of furry zoos and the zoo circle in general is much smaller than the furry circle, but the crossover is still there. So why are they here? Why do zoos feel comfort in this community? Well, the community being so animal-focused definitely doesn't help. We are a community that expresses ourselves through the use of animalistic characters, and we celebrate various medias involving animals. Oftentimes, you will see zoos have some type of persona, like a certain hypnotherapist we're going to be discussing shortly, and some will try and interact and engage with the furry community as a whole, though most of us shut that shit down before they get far. That being said, those on the outside see the small engagements between furries and zoos, as well as them having sonas and lock onto that, which leads to the conclusion via stereotyping that all furries must be zoos, right? Yeah, no. If you look a bit deeper, you can see how furries really feel about zoos. About 99% of us hate them. It's why Kiro doesn't have an audience past maybe 1,000 people, and most of them are either blissfully unaware or just don't think he did it, both of which are not in support of him being a zoo. It's why DHC has lost the majority of their potential future clients after Lucky Coyote being outed as a zoo. Once again, most of the people still looking to commission them are doing so because they like the suits or they quote-unquote don't care about the drama, which while I 100% don't agree with that, they're not supporting DHC because of them being a zoo. So those who are willing to look a little deeper will and do see that we are constantly trying to distance ourselves from zoos, and that we don't want them around as much as non-furries do. So being cast away from the furry community, they felt a need to create their own sub-community, where they could be openly proud about being zoos, and thus, the Zetas were born. I'm sure if you browse Twitter or TikTok, you've seen warnings against people with the Zeta symbols in their names, and well, this is why. The Zeta symbol is a part of the Greek alphabet, and is used as our version of the sound that the letter Z makes. It also has a value of 7. Whatever that means. Now that's the actual symbol itself, but zoos have taken it and tried to adapt it to their own meaning. Zoos use this symbol to find each other first and foremost, but some are trying to turn it into an acronym, meaning Zoophiles for the ethical treatment of animals, which is just ironic. The Zeta symbol has been their rallying point for a good while now, so it's likely you've already seen someone sporting it out in the wild. It kinda reminds me of those people who fly Trump flags off the back of their car, like, this doesn't make you as cool as you think it does. Anyways, yeah, just be cautious about those with the Zeta symbols. Now, while most of them tend to stay to themselves, posting in their own small circle jerk communities about wanting to fuck their dog, some will try and pry their way into the community, demanding acceptance and love for something so vile. One such person goes by the name of Hypnotist Sappho. Okay, I'm gonna split this up into 2 sections because holy fuck, the Sappho situation gained steam in these past few days. So the first half will be Sappho in general, and the second half will be the newest stuff about her as of late. So who is Hypnotist Sappho? I'm sure almost all of you are aware, but if not, then Coyote Lovely has 3 great videos diving into Sappho at length. So if you are curious and learning more, check that out. Link will be in the description below. But to be brief, Sappho came to light when she released a video on September 11th, 2021 called Coming Out About Things, where she discusses being a zoo and talks about themselves and blah blah blah. I do want to bring up and talk about one major argument Sappho likes to bring up, and that's trying to compare being a zoo to being LGBT, and to that I say, how f***ing dare you? How dare you try and take the struggles and hardships of the LGBT community and tarnish it by trying to shove yourself into the narrative because what? You feel the same level of oppression because you want to bang German shepherds? One is involving 2 consenting people in a mutual loving relationship, and the other is wanting to have no repercussions for sexually assaulting an animal whom can't consent. They are not the same. With that out of the way, let's get back to talking about Sappho in general. This video made its rounds on furry Twitter and other places. I first saw my friends and fellow content creators Labret and Coyote Lovely discussing it live. The Zetas also saw this video and sort of began to rally around Sappho, so Sappho in a weird sort of way became their leader. Recently, Sappho has tried to start an organization called the ZNA, or Zeta North America, to... I don't actually know what their goal is, and considering the account is restricted when you first click it, it likely won't be around long enough to care. There's a ton of things over time Sappho has been doing, so check out Coyote's channel to see, though considering one of 3 of his Sappho videos has exceeded 100,000 views, you lot have likely already seen it. But long story short, Sappho became a calm, soothing, and collected voice for Zetas to crowd around and lift up onto a pedestal, calling her mommy and such, which... holy shit, don't do this. Parasocial relationships are a thing and are a negative thing, but that's a whole nother can of worms. Sappho has used this newfound fame and clout to post across multiple platforms such as YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter, trying to garner support and find fellow zoos. This has also caused many furries to explicitly state that no, zoos are not valid and are not a part of the furry community. Sappho's rise to becoming the crowding point has ultimately been the boiling point that would lead us to where we are today, with zoos on one side trying to claim validity and insert themselves into various communities, and furries constantly trying to separate themselves from these zoos, and to make it very clear that not all furries are like this. So part 2, what has Sappho been up to lately? Well, she came out as a map. I kid you not. As if she didn't already have enough shit on her awful plate of traits, she really hit home on this one. She wrote a multi-tweet thread about being a map, or minor attracted person, some of which I'll go ahead and read. You may notice that I now have this symbol in my usernames, and might wonder what that means. Essentially, strictly speaking, I am what would be referred to as a map. I want to clarify that this is rather technical, as I am personally attracted to some people around 16 to 18. This is referred to as a phebophilia. I also have a thing for furry artwork that is labeled as cub, which is entirely fictional furry art. So yeah, I guess thank you aunties and maps for helping me finally accept that. I want to clarify something extremely important here though. I am not seeking out inappropriate things from minors. I am very keenly aware of the laws federal and in my jurisdiction. I will not break those laws. I am not some crazed deviant, so there you go. Now admittedly finding Sappho tweets and screenshots is proving to be difficult because, well... So yeah, she was banned off Twitter and TikTok, but still remains active on YouTube. While this is objectively a good thing, because now it's much harder for her to contact and groom children, it's kind of bad timing because I'm trying to find receipts and now they're all gone. So yeah, that's where we are today. A group of rejects trying to find their place, crowding around one single person who assures them that they're correct, and their lifestyle is one of validity and deserving of love and acceptance. Sappho, and ultimately the Zetas, created an echo chamber where they can plug their ears and ignore all criticism and refuse to understand that their actions are tarnishing a bigger community's reputation. Ultimately, it can be argued that Sappho has become the centerpiece of a cult. Let's ride that thought for a second. Zoos being a sort of cult. And how does a cult gain a following? Through grooming and introducing younger furs and people into this idea that being attracted to animals is a normal thing and something that should even be celebrated. This is why you see so many underage zoos popping up out of nowhere. It's not a coincidence, it's grooming.
Hi TikTok, I'm here with Sappho.
And we wanted to say Happy Zoo Furry Pride! There we go.
Now, most of us has been through that phase more than likely where Lucario will be looking kinda fine during your second diamond playthrough, and well, that's confusing. Why am I attracted to this jackal humanoid thing? This leads to minors looking into the World Wide Web to find if others share this attraction, be it Lucario or whatever other example you may use. And this unfortunately creates a gateway for some into the arms of zoophiles. Now, I'll be the first to admit it. The wolf in the Bad Guys trailer do be looking kinda fine, and Nick Wilde is very much a prominent cartoon crush for a lot of us. Now imagine if someone reached out during your most vulnerable time, during the height of puberty and learning about your own sexuality, and said, well, little one, it's because you want to f animals. And thus, the child begins to believe this. They look at this and say, huh, maybe they're right. And they fall into this sexuality and start to dig deeper and become involved in an overall predatory group, desperately trying to gain new members and continue the cult and continue the belief that this is okay. That's why they target the young and impressionable. If someone came up to someone my age and told me that I wanted to bang animals because I have the hots for a cartoon fox, I'd laugh in their face. And odds are you would too, because we're out of the impressionable age. We've matured and are aware of how messed up this attraction is. That's why they target the young and impressionable. I can look at this situation and come to the conclusion that, hey, anthropomorphic art and furry art in general is its own category of attraction, and this does not mean I want to suddenly shag my dog. The younger generation might not know this, especially if they're told otherwise by predatory people. This is why they target the young and impressionable. That being said, some out of their target demographics still get roped up into believing that being a zoo is an acceptable thing. I'm not gonna sit here and deny that some people do have an attraction to animals, but where you lose me is when you try to convince people that it's morally right. Just because your brain wants to, doesn't mean you should. There are people who have either an attraction to animals or even minors, but there are avenues to help with those attractions and how to combat and ultimately change those through counseling, therapy, and other means. Reaching out to a random internet stranger? That's not the way to do things. Unfortunately, it's much easier to look at the situation and say, no, it's everyone else who is wrong, instead of stopping to analyze your views and attractions for 1 second and go, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should change. And thus, we're left with people trying to advocate for the acceptance of zoo sexuality, creating a cult of like-minded individuals being proud of this messed up attraction, because there's no possible way they could be the ones in the wrong, right? So what can we do about it? What can we as a community do to separate ourselves from these zoos? Well, unfortunately, not much more than what we're doing right now. It's an unfortunate reality that, at the end of the day, we can't control or gatekeep anyone who identifies as a furry. Anyone from any walk of life can wake up one day and decide, hey, today I'm a furry, bark bark. That being said, we can make them feel as uncomfortable as possible. We absolutely should make them feel ostracized and outcasted from this community, and hopefully they'll get the memo. Just know that most won't. If they're an adult, then do not treat them with respect. Do not debate them, because it won't go anywhere. They're too set in their ways, and they'll spout excuse after excuse about how and why it's consensual and morally right, and ignore or deflect towards other issues. I've seen the rebuttal of, well, what about the meat industry, from zoos being asked not to ride their horse, to put it lightly. Which, yes, the meat industry is messed up, absolutely. That being said, so is zoophilia. Both can be bad, and one being worse doesn't negate the other. Now, if a person is a minor, then don't bully or harass them into the sun. Odds are they have been or are being groomed into believing that what they're saying is true, and there's likely a chance they don't fully believe it. If you bully them, you'll lose them entirely, and they'll fall deeper into believing that the Zetas are right, because the Zetas treat them nicely. Zoos have created a cult, and have found a place by creating their own community. The Zetas believe they belong in a space with furries and the LGBT community in general, which is absolutely far from the truth. They found a leader in Hypnotist Sappho, and have crowded around her, and she has become a sort of cult leader to these people. They use her words and each other to ensure and solidify their perceived validity, and have created an echo chamber of controlled replies in a closed-off space to become further convinced that what they say and do is morally good. Now, Sappho is banned, but bear in mind, she's not the only one. There's many others who are trying to reach out and groom impressionable minors into their cult, and that will always be sick and unforgivable. Report them. Block them. Make it absolutely clear that we do not accept or allow people like zoos in our community. Odds are it'll take years before we can become considered separated from zoos. Hell, it may not ever fully happen, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Whoop! Beneath the Mask is playing, so we must be at the end of the video. Thanks so much for watching this video, and thank you guys for your support. I know that video topics like these are out of pocket for me, but I feel like with how much of a hot topic this has become in the furry community, I wanted to make a video to try and explain how the cult of the zoo came to be, and what we can do as a community about it. Anyways, be sure to check out Coyote Lovely's video on Sappho. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!